Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of the Andrew Murnane podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about overthinking and thinking in general. Is it possible to stop overthinking completely? Are there some things that maybe can help you think less or just bring some awareness to the fact that you are even thinking so much and potentially thinking all the time? I'll share with you some things that help me when I begin overthinking and get lost in thought, and hopefully something I say helps. If you have been enjoying the podcast, it would mean a lot if you tossed it a like, shared it on your Instagram story. I will repost it if you tag me in it. If you're on YouTube, tap that little subscribe button. It would, again, mean a lot. So, anyway, today we're going to be talking about overthinking. And the first thing I want to talk about in regards to this is the fact that thinking happens in our mind, but you are not your mind. You are not your mind. You are not your thoughts. Who you are is simply the one that can hear those thoughts. You are simply the one who is aware of your mind. You are not your mind, and you are not your thoughts. So once you further understand that concept, that sometimes is enough for people to not take them so seriously. I got to turn on Do Not Disturb on my computer. So I'm getting messages. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. But anyway, so you're not your mind. You are not your thoughts. You are simply the one who is aware of them, the one that can hear them. But your thoughts are not your voice. And the thing about thinking that people oftentimes misunderstand is they think that thinking is a voluntary action. And to a degree, it can be. You can direct your thinking in certain ways, give it some sort of direction. But take a step back and think, what caused you to want to take your thinking in that direction? What thought the thought? And what thought the thought that thought the thought? And if you go down this rabbit hole, you realize that you don't actually think your thoughts, at least maybe that initial thought. You who you are is just the awareness of those thoughts. But thoughts, similar to the way that your heart beats or the way that you digest your food, thinking just happens. It's like a bodily function. And once you understand that, you can realize that you are not thinking those thoughts. That voice in your head isn't your voice. So maybe you don't have to take it quite as seriously. And I have some strategies that I use, some analogies that I'm going to share with you that help me not take it as seriously, because I know it can be very difficult, especially at first, to not take it as seriously. You think that voice in your head that's constantly coming up with thoughts and saying things is your voice, but it isn't. It's the voice of the ego, the voice of your subconscious programming, but it is not your voice. You are simply the one that can hear it. So if you're the one that can hear it, you can't also be it, similar to the way that you can't touch the tip of your finger with that same finger. And you can't cut a pair of scissors with that same scissors. You can't hear your thoughts and be your thoughts. So, one of the strategies I use to further understand this is meditation. So, when I meditate, the most basic form of meditation is observing your thoughts. And when you observe your thoughts, maybe you want to focus your attention on something like your breath. So, you focus your attention on your breath, breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. And as you focus your attention on your breath, you realize that thoughts continue to come up. Maybe not immediately, but maybe after a few breaths, 3, 4, 5 breaths, all of a sudden some thoughts start popping into your head. But you didn't try to think those thoughts. You're trying to watch your breath. So if you take a second with me, or a few seconds, and we just take 2 conscious breaths, I'll do it with you as well. So breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And just try to focus all of your attention on your breath. Now, maybe you were able to focus all of your attention on your breath during those 2 breaths, but maybe some thoughts began to come up. And typically, eventually, at least after, 4, 5, 6, 7 breaths, thoughts will begin to come up, but you're not trying to think them. So it can help you to realize that you are not those thoughts. Those thoughts just come up, they just happen. So you further understand that you're not those thoughts. It's not your voice. You are simply the one that can hear them. So you don't have to take them so seriously, and you can begin to take them less seriously and not give them so much attention. And that is one of the keys in helping to maybe not stop overthinking, but at least settle it down a little bit. Another analogy I like to use is imagining that voice in your head is the voice of a small child, maybe a 3 or 4 year old child who just learned how to talk, and they're pretty fucking annoying. And they won't shut up, and sometimes they can be maybe really negative. But if you're sitting there and there's a small child next to you and they're saying all of these things, are you going to take them really seriously? If they're saying things like, you suck, you're so bad at that, you'll never be good enough, are you going to take that little child seriously? Or are you just going to look at them and be like, bruh, and start laughing? That's a way that you can imagine that your voice is, and that voice in your head, not your voice, that voice in your head, and your thoughts. They're like a small child who is just super fucking annoying sometimes. You can hear it, but it's not you, and you're not going to take it very seriously, I assume. Another way that you can help not take those thoughts in your head so seriously is by taking a second, similar to the meditation of watching your breath, but instead of watching your breath, just listening to what's going on around you. So if you take a second and just sit and listen, right now, if you're listening, I'm sure you're just hearing my voice, but if I stop talking for a second, which I will, just listen to the sounds around you. So those sounds that you just heard are no different than the sounds that you hear inside of your head. Those thoughts that you hear inside of your head, there is no difference. They're both just sounds, just things that you can hear. But because the thoughts are happening in your head, in your mind, you think that they're different. You take them personally because they're happening inside of your head. So you think that they're your thoughts, but they're just thoughts. Typically, they stem from your subconscious, which has been programmed for the most part between the ages of 3 and 7 or 8, which when you were primarily living in the theta brainwave state. But I'll get into that a little bit more in another podcast episode. But when you listen to the sounds around you and understand that those sounds are no different than the sounds inside of your head, you don't personalize those sounds in your head as much. They're both just noises, just sounds that you can hear from the thoughts that happen inside of your head, whether they're, quote unquote positive or negative. They're just thoughts, just like the sounds of the wind blowing through the trees, the voices of other people having conversations, maybe sometimes the judgments of those people. They're not to be personalized. If someone is throwing shade at you or judging you, it's simply a reflection of themselves. They're simply essentially telling you in a different way that they are unhappy and that they are hurting. That's all they're doing. And just like the wind blowing through the trees, they are simply sounds. There's nothing personal about them. And same goes for the thoughts inside of your head. So the final thing I want to discuss is the difference between who you are and who your mind is and how this plays into being present in your life. So there is you and there is your mind. They are separate entities. You are not your mind. You are simply the awareness behind it. And the thing about your mind and thinking is that it can't exist in the present moment. But you, who you are, is the awareness of your thoughts, your mind, the universe itself, can only live and exist in the present. So when you think about your mind and how it only can exist in the past and the future, have you ever thought about the present? Probably not. You're either thinking about something that happened in the past or thinking about something that may or may not happen in the future. But you actually can't think about the present. You can only be in the present. You can only be aware of the present moment as it exists. And it is always the present moment. So the more often you can be present, the less you will continue overthinking and taking that voice in your head so seriously, because you actually can't technically think when you're in the present moment. So some strategies like watching your breath, because breathing always happens in the present moment. Be where your feet are is a phrase that I really like to remind me to just be where I am right now, to remain present, because things like overthinking actually can't happen when you're fully in the present moment and fully aware of the present. You can only overthink about things that happened in the past or that potentially may happen in the future, like potential scenarios. So once you understand that thinking can't happen within the present moment, it can only happen regarding the past or the future, you can realize that the more often you can stay present, the less you will overthink. So that's everything I wanted to discuss in this episode. Hopefully, something I said, a strategy that I use, helps you when it comes to overthinking and just thinking in general. Yeah, if you enjoyed the episode, please toss it a like. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. It would really mean a lot. And I look forward to discussing more topics in future episodes. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.